What is also important is that the shift in responsibility from the authorities to industry is taking its effect right now in a very strong sense, in a way that manufacturers and importers have registered and have also prepared chemical safety reports with exposure scenarios, where they have introduced also the information on users, which comes from the downstream users. Now they need to pass that on to their customers, and they need to provide, and they are working hard on safety data sheets and the exposure scenarios for their customers. And they provide exact and precise safety advice, which then goes back in a circle, in a long circle, because this is a simplified with only one, with only two companies in a simple supply chain. But in the reality, the supply chains are much longer, and they can have up to 20 and more steps in one process. And those dossiers provide ECHA and the authorities instruments to decide on which substances they want to focus on, which substances matter, which substances do we need to do compliance check, substance evaluation, or harmonized classification, and so on. And then, of course, our information is, as I said, distilled to the public. And then the public can provide us also with good ideas, like the SIN list, to promote our activity. The effect of supply chain communication cannot be underestimated. Companies are forced to assess suitability of risk management advice provided by suppliers. They consciously decide to continue or to discontinue the use of hazardous substances. Awareness will lead to consideration of or a quest for alternatives. And quite often that quest is in an accelerated form when there is an authorization list published. Like there is recently another edition done by the Commission on the authorization list. That gives the final bell for companies to rapidly search and avoid having to present an application for authorization if they can, in time before the final application date, submit a request for authorization. So increased information availability will support them, particularly with less known, lower volume substances also being registered. So by 2018, we will have completed the whole cycle in registration, which will then provide information on perhaps 50,000 or more substances in a much more detailed form than there is today available. Authorization, of course, starts not with the authorization list. It actually starts much earlier. The candidate list, and particularly the registry of intent for the candidate list, is actually the starting point for companies to understand that a substance may soon be subject to authorization. So the registry of intent and the candidate list give strong signal and provide already legal obligations. The authorization list allows companies to apply for authorization for a continued use of a substance of very high concern. It requires an analysis of alternatives and involves public consultation on alternatives. And I must say that this public consultation is going through a learning curve. In the beginning, we had relatively few companies coming forward during public consultation to say, I'm sorry, but I believe I have a substitute for you to offer. And so that's why we organize these trialogues, which are discussions which are taking place between the registrants, the rapporteurs of the RAC and SEA committees that will handle the requests from the industry and need to provide a scientific opinion, and the companies involved that need that authorization. So that kind of discussion, we see more and more companies coming forward with very concrete ideas on alternatives, and the discussion that results from that, which can be observed by the stakeholders, really shows that there is an intensive discussion within the industry on whether or not an authorization is actually required and for how long it should be required. So subject to, what is important is that the authorization, when granted, is subject to time-limited review, and that provides an additional pressure to continue the search for long-term alternative solutions. There is, of course, progress on substance of very high concern. And here you see how the candidate list has grown in its green form and will most likely at the end of the year contain 161 substances. But then you see also how many of those we recommend to go to the authorization list, and how many are under public consultation. And then, of course, what results from that is the authorization list when the Commission takes that forward. What is very important for us is that we have decided within ECHA and together with the authorities to work on a screening exercise to identify substances of concern. So basically, there is this, the roadmap 2020 of the European Commission, which basically goes for the principle that the known SVHCs should, as much as possible, when they are registered, go to the candidate list. Our purpose is different and is complementary in a sense that we would like to know which are the other unknown substances of very high concern, which are yet not identified as substances of very high concern, and which should become substances of very high concern. And for that, a whole exercise is undertaken in order for us to have a more complete registration dossier in the first place, either through compliance check or through substance evaluation, and then to identify whether we have serious concern. And so this requires a joint screening exercise from all the parts that are working on chemicals.
Very briefly now.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So there is also a lot of, there can be unwanted substitution, and that's what you will be discussing as well today, that there may be unwanted substitution to substances with similar properties and similar concerns. And to discourage that substitution similarity, we are doing this screening, and we are also grouping substances more and more for substance evaluation. And we also take that into account in prioritizing substances to the authorization list. The SIN list, of course, you see here the overview of the SIN list currently. 330 substances. You see how many there are registered. They are registered because we focus on the registered substances, and that's why you have a big blue columns here of substances which we do not tackle, as the idea is that we focus on the ones which are registered. And so the number of them which are not in our radar has reduced to only 7. So I think this is also a positive message. Also, applications for authorization, I told you that a lot about that already. I should not dwell on that very much additionally. It works, and we basically are proving that it works. And companies take business decisions if substance is not needed. And if it is needed and the conditions are fulfilled, authorization will be given, but subject to review. Of course, how do restriction authorization requirements affect innovation is quite logical by itself. I have already explained that. I don't need to dwell on that very much more, nor on the example. The example is from a chrome plate sanitary pieces. There are different considerations each company can have. Of course, the evident one is to substitute. But if it cannot substitute, it can actually invest it can decide to transfer that production outside the EU and then import, which is not what we would encourage. But it can also innovate in the EU and also scale back the use of that harmful substance, and then also make sure that the workers are no longer affected by the production process. The REACH system works, and it works in a way that it stimulates innovation and substitution. And REACH is providing every single day better data for the whole industry to support their innovation. Better supply chain communication creates better understanding of customer needs and demands for smart companies to achieve competitive advantages. There is also increased predictability of regulatory action because of the way we really report early on whether a substance is on our radar, so that it helps companies to take proactive stance towards using safer substances. And it's also leading to a better reputation in general for EU suppliers in the eyes of domestic and international customers, and as well as a better perception in the public opinion. So thereby, as I also demonstrated by this graph, companies that are able to show their green image will actually become the winners in the competition and thereby stimulate European competitiveness.